Well, welcome Dan O'Connor to our podcast here. I appreciate the time. And just to introduce you, Dan O'Connor runs our technical services division, which includes Technical Services USA, Trinidad or Core Trinidad, and then now newly minted Core Nations in Guyana, which we had just won a large project for down there for 100 plus people. And so I've known Dan for 20 years. Actually, it's probably been not 20, probably 15-ish or whatever. But Dan's been a known player in the oil and gas staffing, technical services space, project management space, and you joined us about a year ago, and it's been such a joy having you on board. And but yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you've come from, and your past. Yeah.
Sure. No, yeah, appreciate it, Matt. So I was actually born in England, grew up in England, spent most of my life or early life there, then moved to Scotland. Actually lived in Singapore for a couple of years, and then moved over to the U.S. in my mid-teens. My dad was in oil and gas, so he was with BP. My brother's been with Exxon most of his career, and I was always on the service side of the industry, so with engineering companies or project management slash inspection companies. And like you say, joined Core Group about a year ago, and it's been really good being here.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you've come from kind of this oil and gas. Sounds like you grew up. Your dad worked for BP, you said,
Yep.
and kind of this offshore oil and gas projects or onshore oil and gas projects arena is something you grew up in, listening to around the
Yeah.
dinner table. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, but with my dad being on BP, he was always traditionally offshore. Then it got into onshore as well and global. And even in my career, I would say kind of from 2002 through 2014, it was pretty much all offshore. But then the industry started moving onshore, and it got more into the petrochemical side, the plants and refineries, than just onshore facilities, and still offshore as well, of course. And probably around 2004 kind of stumbled into the Trinidad market and have been very involved in Trinidad ever since. And then over the past couple of years with Guyana, and now stepping out from there as well.
And I've been down there with you to launch Core Trinidad, and you're kind of like the mayor of Trinidad, it seems like, down there in the offshore oil and gas space. You've done a great job of building relationships down in that area. Why Trinidad? Why the heart there? Like, how did that come to be?
It came to be I was with an engineering company, and we had gone there for some work we were doing out of Houston. It was just desktop engineering, so we didn't really need to be there, but we'd gone over there for a meeting. And it just appeared that if we had a presence in Trinidad, there was so much more we could do, so much more work we could do, but more we could do for our clients in Trinidad and for the local personnel. And so I kind of volunteered, and then was a bit shocked that the company said okay, but I went and set up the first office there, which went very well. And then a few years later, another company approached me to set up an office for them, and I was with them for a long time, set up the office, and just really became a second home for me. I mean, definitely not the mayor, but they would call me. Made me an honorary Trinidadian, so I was proud of that. And it's just a place where it's good people, there's good work. The clients, good clients. They work, to what makes sense for the project often, where some of that's lost over here in the U.S. where things are bigger.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a place that I always followed, and now has kind of these past few years has started following me. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool sidebar. So you've been in oil and gas projects, and oil and gas, as you know, goes up and
Mhm.
down. And in one of the down markets, you picked up a project in the Galleria for the Silver Arches. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. So Dan brought a piece of one of the Silver Arches into our office here, as you can see.
Yeah.
So every time I drive to the Galleria and I see the Silver Arch, I think about Dan and his team. He was a project manager on that. So now you have to think about it every time you see it as well, so I'm not alone. So that's pretty cool. Tell us about that project.
Yeah, that project was a larger engineering company that does more of the civil works for the city of Houston had come to us because we were a very specialized kind of niche structural engineering company, and they were trying to find a company that could engineer a solution. There's 12 arches through the Galleria, and they wanted to widen the lane, another lane, as well as add a bike lane. So they wanted to cut the arches, lift them, extend them, and put them down in a slightly new location with new foundations, with all the work being done at night because it's a Galleria, and no disruption to traffic. So there were a lot of parties involved, and I ended up project director on our side. We had a team of amazing analytical engineers that did a great job, and we got it done. So it was a bit of quite the headache. So when I had the chance to keep a piece of the arch, I did, and yeah, it was a very cool project.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so obviously you've bolted on technical services to Core Group Resources. We're a staffing and recruiting company, but technical services is a natural branch to what we do.
correct.
But it's a lot more detailed, a lot more focused and structured. Can you walk through coming from a technical services side into a staffing organization? What's that been like for you? And kind of just walk us through those two worlds as they've merged
Sure.
the last year.
Yeah, it's interesting because core group being in so many different industries, obviously in oil and gas and maritime, which is part of the kind of greater energy industry, but I'm technical services is focused on the project side of the business. So it's staffing oil and gas projects where, traditionally the oil and gas and maritime for core group was mostly drill rigs, vessels, or placing kind of direct hire candidates within oil companies. It wasn't really on the projects. So, projects to us, whether it's an offshore platform, a new one being constructed, or maintenance work, or decommissioning, or onshore facilities, or plants and refineries, whatever the client's project is, and it can be the full deal where it's for an offshore platform, it's the design, the engineering, the fabrication, construction, installation, hookup, and commissioning. We can be involved throughout, and we've got one of those starting in Trinidad in January. So we'll have construction supervisors, quality control inspectors, a team of personnel in the fabrication yard, being the client's eyes and ears while that work is going on, which enables our clients, who are typically core groups clients, would be those that are in the HR world, where mine are project managers or project directors sitting in offices, maybe in Houston or wherever. So it allows them to keep doing their job and focus on more pressing things, but we'll be in their eyes and ears in the field, making sure everything's going correctly to plan, following schedules and procedures, safety, and just reporting back to them daily. So
Yeah.
we can be involved in the entire project or any little piece. It's kind of a menu of services. They need us for 2 days or a year and a half.
Yeah.
So
In the project hunting, that's the one difference I've seen is, Chevron or Exxon or one of these big companies will have some oil find. They need to build this big platform or whatever it may be.
yeah,
It's a lot of project hunting. So it's staffing it in peak booms. Um, and uh, and it's a little bit different from traditional staffing, which is, you've got a building or a warehouse or a ship that's like a built asset that's pretty predictable.
yeah,
Project work peaks and troughs, and you have these big waves you ride essentially.
yep,
Um, and so that's the biggest thing. But the technical services side, why it's more detailed and focused, is your clients. When you send a fabrication manager to build a plet or a plam or a platform or a jacket, they're trusting you that the person you're sending is the one that can actually do the job and going to
correct.
certify it and put their name on the engineering and whatnot. And so
Mhm.
it's a different level of professional services than it is in the staffing environment. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. Yeah, they're
Okay.
looking for the technical. It's most of our personnel, even if they're on the inspection side, the quality control, they're multidisciplined, hold a lot of certifications, whether it's NACE for coding or CWI for welding. They use API for tank fabrication or inspection. So our inspectors are very uh, qualified in a lot of different areas. And then we also have, you go up from there where it's construction supervisors or managers, project directors, subject matter experts, where they come to us for often to supplement their project team. So, one of the oil companies, in their office will have their project team, which can be quite large, but internally they don't have maybe somebody that's an expert with subsea umbilicals or pipelines or whatnot, and they'll, instead of them hiring that person and then maybe not needing them in a year or 6 months or whatnot, they'll contract them through us, and that way when the project's over, they just go away.
Yeah, yeah. And it's been interesting working with you because now all of a sudden we were always a Houston-based company. Now all of a sudden we're in Trinidad, and now all of a sudden we've got a project down in Guyana. And I joke with the office that you're like Captain Jack Sparrow of oil and gas project hunting, or we should call him Captain Dan Sparrow. But it's a real thing. Working with you, doing international business development, your customer service, your ability to manage projects at a distance. I haven't really worked with anyone like that before. Can you speak into that a little bit about just kind of your international business development and how do you go
Sure.
about even doing that?
Yeah, I think, when yeah, I learned a lot from my dad being in oil and gas. He always would preach to me integrity. And, I guess once I fell into the Trinidad realm, which was 2003, it was, even though I was part of a company, it was kind of a one-man show. So it was on me to make it happen. And so I knew whether I was sitting in a hotel, sitting at home, sitting in the office, if I don't do it, it's not getting done. So I got so used to that over the years. And then just building relationships, kind of going to these different countries and seeing what's important to them. How do they function that's different from the US? And just following up, I think follow through and kind of staying in touch versus just winning a job and throwing it over the fence and moving on to the next one, but really staying in touch without overstepping, keeping that relationship, kind of customer satisfaction side has really paid off over the years.
Yeah, yeah. Your customer service, your follow up is incredible. It's tier one. It's probably the best I've seen
Well, thanks.
outside of a few consultants here. But you have done an incredible job in that. Um, So, kind of steering the discussion towards oil and gas hiring and getting into the business. Oil and gas has kind of gotten a bad rap with some of the ESG and stuff that was going on for a couple of years, and that oil is bad, but it's looking right now that oil is not going anywhere for the next 200 years. And
Yeah.
so, um, how would you speak to young people that oil and gas has gotten a bad rap? Why is oil and gas, a good career choice for them? Like, why would they want to enter that realm and what are the benefits?
I think, like you said, it's not going anywhere, and it's involved in so much of our everyday lives. And then, so these exploration and production companies, being part of those teams, one, it's very a long-lasting career that generally pays well with good benefits and things like that. But these companies will have different divisions, so they might have offshore drilling or oil and gas. Then they'll have low carbon ventures or wind power. So you can kind of pick where you want to go within the company. And, maybe if certain things are important to you, you could be part of the regulatory group in that company to make sure things are being done correctly and hold people accountable and make sure the right industry standards are being followed. Or you can be on the service side of the business, focused in that area. There's just a lot around oil and gas. If you think about just any organization, just because it's an oil and gas company, they have accountants, they have HR, they have sales, just like any organization. So you don't have to be offshore working or out in the field at a drill site. But although those pay very well and those are great careers as well.
Yeah, and I think there's been one side over the other, but I think what we're seeing with the energy companies we're dealing with is they're using oil and gas to fund renewables,
Hmm.
and because you can't just turn one off
Yeah.
at night and everything else pop up and winds everywhere. You have to use oil and gas to fund renewables because there's only a certain amount of oil and gas on this planet. It'll be gone in hundreds or thousands of years or whatever, but it'll be gone, and what'll be left is renewables.
Hmm.
But we're at this weird crux right now to where you can't turn one off for the other, and so what you're saying is entering into the higher margin oil and gas business, which is a 20% return market. Your renewables is about a 10% return market. It's about half. So you can get high wage bands now to then eventually fund renewables. So don't let the bad rap block you. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. And I've met with a lot of the major exploration and production companies here over the past few years. They had originally kind of committed to will be this much clean energy by 2040, 2030, whatever it might be, with this ramp up from oil and gas, where the traditional petrochemical kind of is declining, and then there's this kind of crossover point where they ramp up to their commitments. But now those same companies have said, okay, yeah, that's unrealistic. We just can't. There's no way we can reach those goals in that by that time frame. So it's kind of the curves are changing, where it's, yes, we'll become less dependent on the petrochemical side of the business, and we will still move towards this clean energy transition.
Yeah.
But the timeline on that is going up.
Yeah. It's much further in the
Yeah.
distance to zero carbon. So get into your high margin cash business now in oil and gas to save Earth later. That seems a general gist.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you want to leave as far as an impression or a vision of yourself or technical services or where you're headed? Is there anything on your heart that you want to share that we haven't covered?
I think just I love the oil and gas industry. I like where it's going, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to be had out there. We had some interns in this summer, and I was asked to do a presentation to them on international sales, which was really sales, but doing it somewhere else. And there's, of course, key things about different countries that, whether it's time frames or punctuality, and where those things might be more important somewhere else than other places. But I think a big piece of it that I said to them is just, being reliable, kind of developing a reputation for getting things done, being honest, being trustworthy, because 20 years flies by. And, for the relationships I had 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, suddenly when those people are in key decision makers, you've gained your reputation within which gives you credibility and trust. Just kind of like the Arches project and every other one out there, projects go wrong. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned. If they did, well, we wouldn't be in business. But so it enables those clients, when something goes wrong, to give you a call and have a conversation and give you the opportunity to make things better versus not getting the call.
Yeah.
So I think, just those kind of core values,
Mhm.
being honest, having the integrity, doing the right thing, and just becoming a reliable employee wherever you're at will take you further than you think.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of pirates out there that'll fly by night, come into these
Mm.
foreign countries, and some of these countries like Guyana and Trinidad have been abused by bad actors. So integrity, ethics, core values, they're all drawn towards, which accelerates growth in those areas. And so you're incredible in that area as well. Your integrity as a person is phenomenal, and
Thank
it's
you.
a pleasure to work with every day. So I appreciate your time, and great job today.
Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Yeah.